Right, good afternoon everybody, and welcome to a different venue again. We are definitely moving around the Force area, so we'll have to see where we end up next time, I think. It's quite exciting going to all different parts of the patch. Anyway, as I said, welcome, and can I ask you something I should have done previously and forgot about? Could you make sure, please, that your mobile phones are turned to silent or turned off? Thank you. Right, moving on, we have apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we just have apologies from Councillors Ali, Ernie Brown and Councillor Don Davies. And then on the officer front, apologies from our Treasurer, Danielle Now.
Thank you. And the emergency evacuation procedure.
Sorry, Chair.
Chairman, could I just mention, I guess, as you probably know, Councillor Alice given her apologies because I believe she had a very traumatic but successful birth and two new twins.
That's right.
I just wondered, it wouldn't be nice if you as chairman could write on behalf of Avon Fire?
Yep, certainly, I'll do that, yep. I have already congratulated her, but I'll do that officially on behalf of everybody, so.
And for the record, the only councillor who's not here at the moment is Councillor May, so he may be arriving a little late.
Okay. Right, item 2 on the agenda then is emergency evacuation procedures, and I think Mick is going to tell us where the nearest exit is.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. It's good to see you all today. There are a number of fire exits nearby. This isn't a building that any of us are used to, so just leave by the nearest fire exit and we'll all meet in the car park. I wouldn't advise following a uniformed officer because they're likely to be going towards the incident. Okay, thank you.
There's one exit right behind over there. I can see that one. Okay, any declarations of interest?
Yes, we have one. Assistant Chief Fire Officer Simon Shilton declares an interest in paper item 8, which is the appointment of a new Chief Fire Officer.
Thank you. And public access, I believe we've had no public access.
No, that's right, none received.
Great, thank you. Right, in that case, I'd like to welcome everybody to this extraordinary Fire Authority meeting. And I do apologise for having had to move the date, but it was to do with the unitary authorities trying to avoid having a council budget meeting in the middle of half-term week, which has been slightly difficult for us because they wanted us to set our precept first. So that's the reason why we had to change the date. Now, this is taking place as a face-to-face meeting because, unfortunately, due to the continuing prevalence of COVID-19, we continue to have room capacity restrictions, and we have had to limit the number of attendees. So for this reason, we are recording this meeting for the public to view. Right, so moving on, I'd like to ask members to introduce themselves, and I'll start with me. My name's Brenda Massey, I'm Councillor for Southmead, and I'm Chair of the Fire Authority. So, which way round? Yeah. Can we start that way?
Councillor John Ash, Bradley Stoke South, for South Gloucestershire Council.
Thank you. Could you use your microphones for the benefit of the
Councillor John Ash.
Okay, all right.
Bradley Stoke South, South Gloucestershire Council. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Councillor Ruth Jacobs, North Somerset Council, Wixon Lawrence and St George's.
Councillor Neil Butters, Bath Avon South, Bath and North East Somerset.
Robert Payne, Councillor for Weston-super-Mare Central, North Somerset Council.
Shelley Bromley, Western Ward, Bath and North East Somerset.
Ben Nutlin, Councillor for the Gate North, South Gloucestershire Council.
Adam Monk, South Gloucester Council.
Councillor Paul Goggin, Hartcliffe and Witherwood, Bristol Council.
Richard Eddy, Bishopsworth, Bristol.
Richard Tucker, Western Milton, North Somerset.
Andrew Brown, Hengrove and Whitchurch Park Ward, Bristol.
Yasin Mahmood, Lawrence Hill, Bristol.
David Wilcox, Bristol City Council, Lockleys Ward.
Brian Hopkinson, District Councillor, South Gloss, Charlton Hayes and Cribs Causeway.
Chris Windows, Bristol City Councillor for Hembury and Braintree.
Can I now ask the officers to introduce themselves?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Mick Crennell. I'm the Chief Fire Officer and the Chief Executive of Avon Fire and Rescue Service. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, everybody. Steve Gregory, Bristol City Council.
Good afternoon. Claire Bentley, Head of Finance at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Afternoon, Tanya Nathan, Head of Procurement, Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Good afternoon, members. Simon Shorten, one of Assistant Chief Fire Officers.
Good afternoon, Angie Feeney, Director of Corporate Services at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Good afternoon, Steve Imrie, the other Assistant Chief Fire Officer.
Good afternoon, Amanda Brown, the Clerk to Avon Fire Authority.
Thank you. And one piece of business is that the date of the Fire Authority meeting, which was scheduled to take place on the 28th of September, and that will now be taking place on the 8th of October this year due to clashes with meetings. So you can't say you haven't had lots of advance warning. So, right, any voting that we need to do will take place as follows. I'll ask the members for those for, those against, any abstentions, and a show of hands for all members voting for. Will be. Any questions before we move on? No? Great. Okay. So the first item then, item 6.1, is the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Avon Fire Authority held on the 15th of December last year. And I move those as a correct record. Is everybody happy with that? Right. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Right. And everybody, no objections to them? No? Thank you. Right. In that case, item 7 is the 2022-23 budget setting and precept paper. And I believe the Director of Corporate Services and Head of Finance are going to present this.
Thank you, Chair. In the absence of the Treasurer, I'm going to be presenting her report today. I'll present the strategic headlines, and then the Head of Finance, who is Claire, who introduced herself earlier, can provide any further details on the figures. As this report is from the Treasurer, it represents her professional independent guidance and advice to you as the Fire Authority, and having applied scrutiny to the underpinning financials and ensured compliance. The report recommends approval of the 22-23 revenue budget, which is outlined in your Appendix 1, and with the 1.99% increase in the precept. So for members of the public, this means the additional council tax charge, which is ring-fenced for fire, which appears at the bottom of your council tax bills. That increase represents an increase of £1.52 per year, or 2.9 pence per week, and that's based on a Band D property. Without that increase, as highlighted in the report, the authority would face a deficit of £685,000 in 22-23 and not balance their budgets, which is a statutory requirement. There has been a considerable amount of work to arrive at the proposed budget for 22-23, and that financial planning and modelling approach has previously been discussed with members alongside the assumptions which are provided in your Appendix 3. The budget setting is also aligned with the authority's service plan. We have also consulted a wide range of stakeholders specifically on the proposed budget, and the wider public also on the budget as part of the service plan consultation. The results of those consultation is outlined in paragraph 5.3, but both predominantly agree or strongly agree that the Fire Authority should increase the precept by the 1.99% and that the service represents good value for money. Increasing the precept will enable the authority to have a balanced budget for 22-23, as I said, which is a statutory requirement, and in the face of considerable cost pressures. Those cost pressures are outlined in paragraph 5.8 and 5.9, and include pressures around the collection fund deficits, rising utility bills, bills around pension, inflation, COVID-19, Brexit, pay awards and NI increases. You'll see from paragraph 5.8 that the collection fund deficit is particularly challenging and a key cost pressure. And from the Treasurer inquiries with other services, Avon Fire Authorities seems to be hit particularly hard with this, and in particular around Bristol for the reasons that are outlined in that paragraph. The increase in the preset will also enable us to manage and mitigate the further, as yet unfully, quantifiable financial risks, which are also set out in paragraph 6.1. The paper also confirms that as part of the budget setting process, there has been scrutiny, consideration and application of efficiency savings through the work of finance with budget holders and a review of all of the baseline expenditure. Therefore, the Treasurer also confirms to you in paragraph 5.10 that there has been a robust budget setting approach. It remains very challenging to balance our budgets in the context of increasing costs and financial pressures, and with a cap on how much we can increase the precept, which doesn't apply to some other blue light services. And we also have challenges with a one-year funding settlement. However, this report represents a pathway to balance budgets in these very challenging times while still delivering our statutory duties and more, and the authority's service plan in respect of 22-23. I'd finally, as she is not here today, like to thank the Treasurer for all of her work on this, including the finance team and budget holders. It does represent a significant and complex piece of financial work. I think if that concludes my sort of overview, and I'll pause here for kind of questions. And of course, as I say, the Head of Finance is here if there are questions on the detailed figures.
Thank you, Angie. And I would also like to echo thanks for everybody. It's quite a complicated piece of work, and I do appreciate the hard work you've put into it. Okay, Adam.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of time in this meeting, we had to change the meeting, so this is the first opportunity I've had to say this. So we moved the meeting to fall in line with the other unitary authorities so they could present finalised papers to their councils. Not the fault of the unitary authorities, but I certainly know in South Gloss they will not be providing finalised papers because they don't know how the rebate that has now been offered by central government to taxpayers for utilities will work. So certainly the papers going forward to South Gloss are not finalised. So that is an argument for officers, but that argument now falls, doesn't it, for future reference. But my question is around council tax deficits. So I understand that Bristol is the largest unitary authority that are deficit, and they also have the largest council tax base. But they are also part of the city region deal. So given the fact that, so I can only speak from a South Gloss perspective, that they have budgeted for more money from the city region deal, which relates to business rates, not council tax, than they had previously thought would come through. Do the unitary authorities not have the ability to top up, for want of a better expression, what the shortfall on the council tax is, which I doubt they probably can because it's business rates, but it's a question to ask. And then secondly, given that they will still be trying to recoup those deficits, if they are successful in recouping some of those, do we then see that in later years? Does that make sense? Certainly in the budgets that we see as unitary authorities, we have what's lost, what the shortfall is, and then what was gained. So it's a secondary budget line.
Thanks. So, yes, we do get adjustments to the collection fund based on actuals. So this year's collection fund, they've taken into account any difference between what the projections were for last year and what the actuals were for this year. But we won't actually see any benefits from this year until next year's budget. But potentially, yes, we will see that. If then there is extra recovery, then we would get an additional surplus in next year's collection fund.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to to comment really that considering the collection fund deficit, considering the pressures from COVID and all sorts that have been going on in the last couple of years, I think it's remarkable that the fire service can continue to provide such an excellent service for an increase of less than 3p a week.
Thank you, Paul. I think we probably echo that sentiment. Any other questions? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a technical question on some of the figures in the paper. In the comparison between the effect of having a 1.9% rise as opposed to freezing the precept, there is a difference in the figures for non-pay costs that would arise, which is £50,000, and in the appendix that's against the supplies and services entry. I just wondered if that's an actual difference or a typo.
No, that does reflect a difference in terms of what we've projected as a potential additional pension administration cost. It's been put into the 0% to reflect a potential worst case scenario. So there's a little bit of a difference between the 1.99% and the 0%. But that's because at the moment we think that 50,000 additional cost is likely, but it's not confirmed. So that's a slight difference between the two columns.
Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably down to my lack of understanding of pension budgets, but in Appendix 1, the appendix costs, the pension costs are listed as 1.6 million, but in Appendix 2, the pension grant from the government is 2.4 million. Why is there a discrepancy, please?
So the pension costs in the overall budget are actually about ill health retirement costs, which we are liable for as a fire service. The £2.4 million grant goes towards our pension contributions that we pay, which are actually part of our pensions holding account, which sit outside of our revenue budgets. So it's a separate part of that. So does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry? No, I don't.
Richard,
Richard, were you indicating?
Sorry.
Oh.
I purely actually wanted to comment when we come to debate. Are we entering debate?
Yes, you can ask.
Yeah.
Well, it's questions and debate, yeah.
If we concluded questions, just to start debate, and I apologise about the slight mistake there. As you probably know, Councillor Massey, I pride myself on being one of Bristol's last surviving high factorates. One consequence of that is that I'm more than happy to cut one of Chris Window's legs before I actually vote for a tax increase. But seriously, since I've served on this authority, I've been very impressed in the way that we've sought to actually run quite a lean ship and actually attribute and cut away surpluses and make efficiency savings. Frankly, although I accept that a lot of people, particularly the vulnerable, are going to be hard pressed by utility increases in price, etc., other things, I think to maintain and put safety first for £1.50 a year is remarkable. And I certainly don't want us to have to make the £600,000 of savings, which would have vastly adversely impact on the well-being and safety of people in the Wicker area and the Avon area. So on that basis, I'll be very happy to support the 1.99% precept increase.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, I think that's the situation wherein we absolutely have to do this. Yeah.
Just say, Chair, that I think it's a no-brainer, really. Our congratulations, too, for the work that's been done and the tight ship, etc. And I think, it's a very suitable response to go for the 1.99. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? No? Okay. Do you want to sum up? No?
I think we can just move to the recommendations. So the Fire Authority is asked to approve the attached 2022-23 revenue budget and the proposed precept of £77.95. This represents an increase of £1.52 per year and 2.9 pence per week based on a Band D property, and also agree this approved precept be used to the unitary authorities, be issued to the unitary authorities in the Avon Fire Authority area by the 1st of March 2022. And finally, to instruct the Treasurer to forward the approved 2022-23 precept details to the unitary authorities as the billing authorities in line with its statutory requirements. So we need a proposer and a seconder, please.
Could I propose this?
Thank you, Richard. And the seconder? Yeah.
So who seconded?
Yeah. Okay, so can I see those in favour? Could you raise your hands, please?
That's
I think that's unanimous, isn't it?
Okay, super.
Brilliant. Great. I'll just ask, just for the record, anybody wanting to abstain? Voting against? No. Right, so that's definitely carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie, for covering that paper.
Yeah, thank you for all the work that everybody's put in on this. So it's very much appreciated. I know how difficult it is. Right, moving on to item 8. I think you're doing this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm dealing with item 8, and Assistant Chief Fire Officer Simon Shilton has just left the room. So this is my paper to you. It concerns the appointment of our new Chief Fire Officer and Chief Executive. The background to this paper is, of course, that our current Chief Fire Officer and Chief Executive, Mick Crenell, has announced his intention to retire from service on the 31st of March. He will be delighted that you say he looks young. That's brilliant. At the Fire Authority meeting on the 15th of October, members approved a recruitment process that was slightly extended in the end, but there has now been a recruitment process undertaken by members of People and Culture. So my recommendation to you, members, is to ratify and formally appoint People and Culture Committee's preferred candidate, which is Assistant Chief Fire Officer Simon Shilton, as the new Chief Fire Officer, Chief Executive of Avon Fire and Rescue Service with effect from the 1st of April this year. I will go through a couple of minor background details for your benefit before we have any discussion. So the reason this paper has come to you is, although the Constitution provides for People and Culture Committee to undertake the recruitment process, it is for you as members of the full Fire Authority to formally appoint members of the Service Leadership Board and the statutory officers. So that's why you collectively have to make this decision. The financial implications are set out at paragraph 4.1. I don't intend to go through those. They're publicised every year in the pay policy statement anyway, but the details are there. In terms of key considerations, so the process involved a wide selection campaign, wide advertising campaign, and the use of headhunters as well. We had 2 applicants who were shortlisted, one internal and one external, and they went through a very rigorous selection process, which I witnessed throughout and was exceptionally hard and fair. It involved a very detailed application application form and CV, a stakeholder engagement forum, a business continuity exercise, a presentation to a People and Culture Committee meeting, and followed by a formal interview. Scores and weightings were appointed throughout that process, and they were all collated at the final stage on the 7th of January. And Assistant Chief Fire Officer Simon Shilton was, I'm pleased to say, the highest scoring candidate across every single stage of that process. And therefore, he has been selected as the preferred candidate by People and Culture. Just a little bit about Assistant Chief Fire Officer Simon Shilton. So obviously he is your current Assistant Chief Fire Officer for Service Delivery Support. He has had a long and interesting 28 career in the fire service, and all those details are set out at paragraph 5.4 of my paper. You will obviously realise that this will create a vacancy for a new Assistant Chief Fire Officer. After discussion with Service Leadership Board, it is suggested to you today that we allow the new chief to settle into his role and decide on the structure of his team. That will necessitate him using his powers under the Constitution and under the scheme of delegation to make a temporary appointment to cover his old role while he settles in. There are provisions about that he can make an appointment up to 6 months, but that is subject to ratification by either People and Culture or this meeting at the first available meeting date. So this matter will come back either to People and Culture or Fire Authority for ratification. And then, of course, in due course, there will be a full recruitment campaign for a new Assistant Fire Chief Officer. So without further ado, I open the floor, I think, to any questions or comments, and then once you've indicated your agreement, then I think we need to invite Assistant Chief Fire Officer Shilton back into the room. Thank you. Councillor Eddy.
Question, Chairman. Purely to say, Mixwelland's departure leaves us with quite a hole to fill. In my view, Simon's appointments and selection gives us the best chance of hitting the ground running, and I have full confidence in the transparency and the robustness of that selection, so I'm very happy. And with regard to Amanda's point about the pragmatic way of filling his present role, I'm very happy with that proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Goggin.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Richard said, and I'm quite happy when it comes to the vote to propose or seconds.
Councillor Wilcox.
As Chair of People and Culture, I'd like to thank the members who were involved in the rather rigorous recruitment process, which involved days of people's time to select the correct candidate. It was an interesting process, but enjoyable and interesting. Thank you.
I don't know who was first. Sorry, Councillor Butters.
I'd just say thanks. I'm sure the right decision has been reached. From what I hear, it was an extremely thorough process, and congratulations. I'm very happy to second or whatever. Thank you.
Ben Nutland.
Yeah, I just wanted to obviously thank Amanda for the report that she put into for all of us. Wish Mick the best of luck with all his future endeavours, and wish Simon the best of luck in his new role.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
It was my great pleasure to go to the fire station in Weston-super-Mare with Simon Shilton, who came along to discuss matters, and I'm very happy that he's been selected. I must say that Mick has been wonderful to us, and everybody at my station wants to wish you all the very best.
Yeah, can I just ask a question? Are we approving the recruitment of a new Assistant Chief Fire Officer, or are we just noting that?
We're just dealing with the appointment today, so the recruitment process will come back to you and People and Culture in due course once a plan has been formulated. So it's too early to give them the go-ahead today. If members are happy, that's the proposal.
Any more comments? Oh, Chris done that.
Yes, if I can. Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to add my congratulations to Simon Shilton being appointed. Ever since he's been with the authority here, I feel that he's gone out of his way to make sure that he does the job that he's been appointed to, and also I believe supports our retiring chief, who unfortunately I've heard that one of our members, who's not too far away from me, having decided to remove one of my lower limbs, has now suggested that our retiring chief should be put into a hole somewhere. I think he needs help. But no, the chief also joined us at a very difficult time and took us through a very difficult process as well. So I think he needs congratulations for that, and I think he's going to go to other places. As will I in the middle of this year, apparently. So don't feel that it's just you. I should be going as well. Maybe not to the same place, though. Thank you.
Okay, any more comments?
If we could maybe do the proposal second and vote, and then if we invite Simon back in the room, maybe we could give him a round of applause and congratulate him suitably. Okay. So who wants to propose, please? So Ben Nutland?
I think Richard wanted a second.
And Richard, second? Okay. So can we have any abstentions? Any votes against? Everyone in favour, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Okay, Emma, would you like to go and collect Simon, please?
I think if we're going to have a round of applause for Simon, we should have one for Mick as well.
Mick, I'm sure will get his share in due course. Simon, I don't know whether your ears were burning out there, but there were lots of really nice things being said about you. And I think everybody has acknowledged how much work you've put into the job you're doing currently. And we're really looking forward to working with you longer term. Obviously, we're going to say goodbye to Mick at some time, but that will be a different celebration to today. So everyone appreciates all that you've done, and we hope to be working with you moving forward. So congratulations.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair, and firstly thank you members for your support. I'm very much looking forward to working with you all in the coming years in delivering our commitment to our communities. It's a real honour to be selected to be our next Chief Fire Officer, and also a real privilege to be a leader of such a fantastic organisation, and it's a privilege that I will take very seriously, with full commitment and full passion in believing in our service, in our continual improvement. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Looking forward to working with you. I'm drawing up a list of tasks now. Okay, moving on then, on to item 9, which is about, it's got a really exciting title, the Public Sector Audit Appointments Invitation to Become an Opted-in Authority for External Audit Services. I'm very glad I'm not presenting it, so...
It's Head of Procurement, Tanya Nathan's going to present this for you.
Thank you, Chair. A bit difficult to follow Simon after that, and quite a dry subject, I agree. Okay, so this paper was discussed at the AGEC this morning, and it has been recommended by the AGEC committee that we present today, and that we discuss the approving opting in to the PSAA invitation and join that procurement exercise. So just a little bit of background, pick out a few things from the paper for you. So the Fire Authority received an invitation from the PSAA to opt in to their new procurement process that starts shortly. The current agreement is expiring on the 31st of March, and Deloitte were the auditors that were appointed by PSAA about 5 years ago to us. So this is an independent organisation that's put into place by the Secretary of State and that is, does a procurement nationally for all opted-in bodies on their behalf, and they independently appoint an auditor to whoever's opted in, following a procurement process, all the terms and conditions and stuff, and then they have a role around making sure that our fees are agreed, that they meet the agreements, and any disputes are thrashed through appropriate means. There is a link in the paper to their website that has lots of more information if you're really interested. Some of us had to read it. So, some of the, just from a financial implications point of view, there are no financial implications at this stage, so this paper is just about opting in. And then following a procurement process, if we do decide to opt in, then obviously I will come back to this, this forum and say what the outcome was, who's been appointed, etc. for us, and we can discuss that at that stage, and we should also know what our fees will be going forward at that stage. I have put in the paper that I am expecting an increase in our costs because the market is quite volatile at the moment and increasing, but we won't know until they do their procurement exercise what those specific fees will be. Some of the benefits of opting in are that obviously they are an independent and they will appoint an independent auditor for us. So that has its benefits because obviously we are not involved in that process. Because it's a national agreement, we should be able to obtain better savings across the board and get better fee rates. They also have the skills and expertise within their organisation to carry out the procurement exercise and to write appropriate specifications, etc. From an internal point of view, one of the benefits is obviously that we're not doing the procurement exercise, so we're saving on internal resource, and we benefit hopefully from the value for money perspective, because by joining in, we're not trying to compete or go out on ourselves and get matching prices. Might be a bit more difficult for us. I've included a timetable for information and also the principles of what they do when they consider our appointments. So there is a number of things they will consider, and they will consider appointing auditors that we currently have, but it will all depend on the process, and then we do have an opportunity at a later point in that process if we're not happy with whoever they've appointed us with. So I've explained that a little bit in the paper as well. So some of the risks are that there isn't a guarantee that we will retain our current auditors, so they might appoint a new one. That it's a national agreement, so at the moment in the current agreement there's over 400 people, public sector organisations that have opted in. I don't know how many will opt into the new one, but it's already in excess of 100 organisations. So we do have, although they consult, we might have a smaller voice and a smaller, we might get considered into the mix of things, but we will do our best as always. And also, once we opt in, we can't exit the agreement. So once we're in, we're in. That's it for 5 years. We can't come out. But we do have recourse within that agreement if we're not particularly happy with the way our audit provision is being provided. And there are formal ways to address that, as you would expect. And also, one of the risks, obviously, is if we decide not to opt in, then we would need to carry out our own procurement exercise and appoint external auditors. Although the contract expires 31st of March next year, we would actually need to appoint by December this year, legally, so it's a shorter timescale than you realise. So I think that covers most of the benefits and risks. So I think really it's just to see if you would like to approve the recommendation that we opt in, unless you have any questions for me.
Chair, can I suggest that we just give Councillor Goggin an opportunity to report the outcome of AJAC this morning?
Thank you. Just a bit of information for those who weren't lucky enough to attend the AJAC meeting this morning. But we did vote unanimously. I'm having a bit of deja vu listening to the presentation again, as I'm sure Tanya is as well. But yes, we did decide, having considered unanimously, that to recommend that we do enter the PSAA scheme.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Well, just to echo what Councillor Goggin has said, the more the debate went through this morning, it seemed clearer that to go in was the better alternative, and that if we didn't do it, there were bigger risks, and we risked getting into trouble down the line. So, fully support. Thank you. Does that have to be moved?
I think it will.
Sorry.
Has to be moved formally.
Yes, I was just waiting to see if there's any other questions first.
Okay.
Councillor May.
Chair, can I just say that when I read the paper, I was a little bit worried because it just gives the option to opt in as opposed to giving a fair assessment of opt in and opt out. I'll vote for it, but I do feel that in a way, having just gone through a major exercise to appoint external auditors, the marketplace out there is very competitive, even though it may be quite high, and it just feels to me a little bit that we perhaps are just expected to approve this today rather than actually going into the detail of how the process could in actual fact be looked differently in terms of external auditors. It is really important for our finance people that we do have that external role. It is independent, and as we all know in both the public sector and the private sector, there's a lot of difference between the quality of the external auditors systems out there. So it's just that I suppose I just felt a little bit nervous when I saw the paper.
Thank you, Councillor. I think there was a much longer debate at AJAC about this because obviously it's AJAC who make the recommendation to the Fire Authority. When I read the paper, I did think it was balanced in terms of setting out the alternative and the risk, but I take on board your comments, and I'm sure procurement will too, that we maybe need to make sure there's a better balance in the paper. Thank you. Any other questions?
My understanding is we don't have a great deal of choice, but do we know at this point if any of the unitary authorities are opted not to go down this route? And then does that cause any conflict of interest if there's one auditor appointed to cover the Southwest, and so then our auditor is ABC auditor, and they're doing Bristol, South Gloss? Is that a concern for us from a
I think Councillor Wilcox may be able to help because he spoke earlier on this very subject.
Yes, I have the dubious pleasure of being on the West of England Combined Authority audit and Bristol City Council audit, and we've just gone through exactly the same route as selecting the PSSA approach. Yeah.
Does anyone know the position from the other unitary authorities who's present? South Gloss have, okay. Okay. There is a deadline, I believe, to accept, isn't there? Which is...
Yeah, basically fors and against and risks, etc. To be quite frank with you, I think actually having an auditor appointed through a third person is always a sensible thing, because at the end of the day, especially hands off, let someone check you. And, you know, there's always a danger by appointing our own auditor, then there could be a connection. And I've seen that in the past with councils, so small ones. So I think in reality, you know, I couldn't see any reason why this, you know, is not an advantage to us to go this route. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Mick?
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to that, I don't think we should underestimate the amount of work that would be required in terms of doing this procurement if we were to do it differently to going down this route. So our recommendation as officers would be to support that. I believe AGEC have supported it this morning as well. But for me, this saves an inordinate amount of work for Tanya and her team by going down the framework route.
Councillor Goggin?
Thanks. Tanya did do us the favour this morning of explaining exactly how long she thought the procurement process and the resources required. So I don't know if you want to say this to the other members.
Yes, of course, yeah. So procurement of this size, I think, would take a minimum of 6 months and would require at least one procurement officer, probably quite substantial effort to write the specs, etc. And it would require a number of people to be involved in the evaluation process and scoring, which takes quite a lot of people's time and effort, as we'll be talking about later on the internal audit side of things, which we've just gone through. So it is really quite a substantial piece of work. And yes, the market is out there, but we're getting indications that if we're going out the tender for at the same time as PSAA, then we're in competition almost with PSAA. And then would the suppliers bid for ours, or would they bid for the PSAA? Because they will have to pick. You know, it's a lot of work from a supplier's point of view to go for a tender exercise. So they do pick and choose what they go for. So there is a risk there that we won't get quite the results that we would hope if we went out on our own. I hope that helps put it in context.
Councillor May, did you want to add anything?
Chair, it's my first meeting here, so okay. I don't think I want to particularly stir things up. But well, I do think there is an alternative that perhaps we should have considered. I do appreciate you got to do a specification, but we saw when we went out a vast difference in the quality of people and the offers that they actually can make to the progressive development of an organisation. And I think just accepting a national process will be the lowest common denominator, as opposed to perhaps other options. But I say I've made my point, and I think at this point I don't wish to go to the wall on it or vote against. I just think it's something perhaps to consider in the future.
Okay, thank you.
In 5 years' time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tucker, I think first, and then Councillor Goggin.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in a bit of background in terms of North Somerset's position to answer Amanda's question. And I was just trying to recall the audit meeting last month, and I've just found the recommendation, which I'm pretty sure that was passed, and it basically said that the audit committee supports the recommended option for the future procurement of external auditors to the council by Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited, PSAA. So it sounds like we're going down the same route from recollection.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Goggin?
Sorry to keep butting in. Yeah, I do believe as well, although she's not here today, it was our Treasurer's recommendation that we do join the PSAA. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn on that.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Eddy?
if there's no other comments or questions, I think we need to move to the vote.
To propose? Who's going to propose and second?
To propose, didn't you?
So Councillor Gogging is
As
going
chair
to
of
propose.
AJ?
Yeah. Who's going to second?
Right.
Councillor Eddy. Any votes against? Any abstentions? Can you show your hands for votes in favour, please? We have a full house.
Yeah.
Super, thank you.
Great, thank you. Right, item 10 on the agenda is for information, and that's to say that the date of the next meeting is Wednesday the 30th of March, and it will be back here again. And maybe after that we'll be able to get back to Portishead. Although it's been quite exciting going around all these new venues that we've never seen before, and not getting lost too many times as well. Only occasionally.
Could I just congratulate you on efficiently chairing the budget meeting, so we're over in under an hour? I'm sure Bristol next Tuesday won't quite achieve that.
No, a little bit longer, yes. Right. Item 11, exclusion of the press and public. To resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following items of business on the grounds that they contained exempt information pursuant to Schedule 12A, Part 1 of the Local Government Act 1972, and that in accordance with Schedule 12A, Part 2, Paragraph 10 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So we will now cease...
Propose?
Oh, sorry. Right, I'm proposing that. Can anybody second it for me? Thank you, Richard. So, can I...
Votes against or abstentions? Is everyone in favour of going into exempt session? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we can stop recording.